It's 4 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. It's okay to call it to order. And because Philip's not here, because he got ill, I am going to just note everybody who's here just for the minutes. And I don't know your name. Patrick. So Patrick is sitting in for Philip. And so then I'm the chair, Harlan Green, Wilmot Frazier is here, Mickey Rosenblum is here, Robert Rosen is here, Dale Teeling's here, David McCormick's here, Peg Eastman is here, and Nick Butler is here. And everybody here. So we call that to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. I had made a few small changes and I sent them to Philip, but I'm sure, Dale, that you have actually found some since you're the resident grammarian, and maybe no. And so, and I'll just say, remember that when you do speak, David, to turn your green light on.
Yeah, there you go. I was not present, and it reflects that I'm present. I think somebody confused me with Dale because Dale is stated in the minutes as making statements, and his name is not listed as being present.
I will say that I think Philip caught that, because I think in the version that I have, you are not. I think you did realize that. Maybe you communicated with him. So the version that I have, yeah, that's already been corrected.
I communicated with him. Right.
I'd say if there are no, I'll just say for the record, I saw a word cut out. I saw a period missing. I saw one typographical error, like I think got hot instead of got or something like that. I had sent those in. Does anyone else have any? If there are no changes, can I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Well, I have no changes, but I would like to make a comment that I would like to commend the chairman for being the only vote against sending the letter to the archives in history.
Duly noted. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, can we call it? Everyone in favor, please say aye or raise their hand or both.
Aye.
Aye. So it looks like our minutes have been approved. It looks like unanimously, I believe. So the first item is the Hampstead Marker, which I believe you all have. And Nick, do you mind if I turn it over to you? Do you just want to do a brief presentation, since I think you were, at least according to the archives, that you were one of the people behind helping to draft it. And thanks for all that great historical information that came along with it.
Sure. So I'm in conjunction with my neighbors in the Hampstead neighborhood and with the sponsorship of the Historic Charleston Foundation, submitted an application. I went to Columbia and I talked to Dr. Breeden about the topic. And so I helped craft the language that you see for the proposed plaque. So it's a big story to tell in a short amount of space. So I hope that the product before you makes sense. I'll be happy to try to clarify any questions you might have.
Thanks, Nick. And as we have done in the past, just for a way of procedure, if we want to take one side at a time, are there any comments about side one of said plaque? Are you seconding, or do you see something that you'd like to discuss?
No, maybe I just thought it would sound better, unless it doesn't mean that. The last line was annexed in 1850.
I guess it is a sentence fragment. I think you are correct. So it would read, the originally affluent village later developed into a working class neighborhood. Or you could say, actually it is technically correct, comma, annexed in 1850. So I think if you read it out loud, the originally affluent village later developed into a working class neighborhood, and developed into a. So we're doing developed as a verb, as the action verb.
Yeah,
right.
That's why I said
Right.
it the way I
Okay.
did. I wasn't sure.
Dale,
Nick, if you got room for a couple of words, could you say annexed by Charleston in 1850? And that, if you have a couple of words.
That was in my version of it originally, but that was part of the trimming to be economical, because as Dr. Breeden pointed out, well, it's the signs in Charleston, so we can assume that it was annexed by the city of Charleston. But yeah, that would be a clarifying point if there is room to spare.
I'm assuming you could say by the city or to the city instead of having to say Charleston, and I'm not sure how many characters that is.
And then decide not.
Well, is there a motion to, so David? Well,
I'm looking for in these. I'm looking for the text of the marker in this batch of materials that I've received, but I don't know, I don't see it. There were no, they weren't passed out.
So do you want to read it quickly, Wilmot, Dale?
Well,
Yes, what I'm doing, exactly what I'm doing now. Reading it.
It's a shame we have to keep it so brief. Can we do something else? Or can they, will they let us make it longer or larger? Probably not. Have to ask though.
Well,
Quite a
sure.
bit.
And I was just looking at the text in answer to the query earlier. The first sentence in line 3 of side 1 says it's a suburb of Charleston. So it was annexed in the 1850. So hopefully that word Charleston in the early part of the text obviates the necessity of repeating.
I was on Archives and History as well years ago. They have a set size, and if you want that really good permanent marker, they have to fit it into the space. And that's why it's a lot more brief and a lot more precise than other things which can come along.
Mr. Chairman, if I may elaborate. So I appreciate the sentiment that you would like to see more text and more history on a larger panel. And that was one of the real challenges of crafting this to tell a big story of a part of Charleston that has not been told. And it's a complicated, colorful history. And rather than get upset about having to edit it down to so few words, my viewpoint is, well, this is just the first of what could be a series of markers distributed through the neighborhood or the village that tell more specific parts of the big story. How does that suit you?
And do you know, I know, Nick, you said you worked possibly with people in the neighborhood. And it's my thought, if the people in the neighborhood are content with how it's been, do that too. I think, that's just my personal opinion, that if the people in the neighborhood are happy. And if I can also say that the college did something very similar, is again, we tried to cram our history on one of these exact same markers, which was impossible, but being put in a visible space, so much more followed that. You put something like that in a visible space, and then that's been our experience. That so much more interpretation came, after an initial thing like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so David has, so is your motion, David, to accept it as it is?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second? Is there any discussion?
Yes, there is some discussion. Hampstead is a very notable neighborhood in the history of African Americans. The congregation which Denmark Vesey with which Denmark Vesey was associated was located in Hampstead. It was the center of an African American neighborhood for many years, following the First World War and into the Second World War era and up to the present, certainly for over a century. And it seems that that kind of information in terms of the ethnography of the neighborhood ought to be noted. If there's anything else that I don't think it needs to be much more specific than that, but you do have a coming together of many different groups of people.
Right.
in the city of Charleston. And this is kind of ignores that.
Well,
The populace.
it's a distillation of all that. And part of the research packet that you have there is the much longer version of that, which gives all the specifics about the demographics of the neighborhood and the fact that it became a predominantly African-American neighborhood in 1960. Had been a very mixed neighborhood previous to 1960. And-
Quite mixed. I remember my father having been involved in a struggle to make Martin Park an African-American park, because you had this park designated as a segregated white area.
Yeah.
In the middle of what was essentially an African-American neighborhood.
Well, and
So,
Hampstead Mall, that is part of this too, was.
this was over at Martin Park.
Right.
Not
But Hampstead Mall underwent the same thing. It was a designated white neighborhood until the year 1960, when city council changed it to a designated black playground. We're talking about Hampstead Mall right there in the center of the
the
village.
stadium. The mall.
Became a designated African-American playground in 1960, following those demographic changes. And that's really part of the story that I wanted to tell. And in the interest of economy of words,
Words,
that's part of the language that got left off. And if you look at side 1 of the proposed text in line 17, it says that Hampstead was originally a affluent village and became a working class neighborhood. And my proposed text to the state archive was this became a working class, racially diverse neighborhood. And in the economy of the space we have, those words racially diverse.
Are ethnically and racially diverse.
Skip-
Ethnically and racially diverse.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I would prefer to see that kind of language, but in the interest of space, I'm okay with leaving that out and then telling that story in future markers. So for example, I've been working with some people over the past year who have plans to bring before this group a marker for Denmark Vesey's church, which absolutely should have a marker on Hanover Street, right next to the side of that church. So rather than trying to tell all of these disparate stories, we're going to save those later stories
For a specific location.
Yeah,
And
where
the-
we can really devote the necessary attention to.
And isn't there a marker or so within a block or so for the cigar factory?
Yes, so right up
So-
the street, within sight of the center of Hampstead Mall is the marker for the cigar factory strike.
Which does talk about race. I agree
Yes.
too. So we're still in, we're discussing that motion.
Yes.
Did you want to amend the motion or shall we?
I don't have developed into a working class, ethnically and racially
It
diverse
will not
neighborhood.
fit, you know, I mean, you only have about 8 characters.
8 characters to work with.
I mean, that's what it looks like about to me, so.
I guess you could-
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe about 11. Actually, probably less, because I'm just guessing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 or 12.
Including space.
And yeah, right, including spaces and punctuation.
Okay, I would, 8. Is she working class?
So, and if someone who knows Robert's rules of order better than I, can
Sure.
say, so we,
That would be.
we're still having discussion.
You don't have 15?
No,
You don't have racially diverse?
I mean, I think, Wilmot, if you were to use a word, I think you could only use the word diverse.
Diverse would
which
be good, yeah.
Which would
Working
infer.
class, but working class
and it-
it doesn't say what kind of diversity you're talking about. It just says working class here. And that relates to the fact that mainly working people live there.
Right.
You could say-
Until 1960, it was, and I think the background thing, there was Little Mexico, there was, there were Germans, there were Irish.
Yeah.
There were Greeks. And so actually for only 30 or 40 years, I guess I don't know if the neighborhood is still predominantly African-American or not with the demographics are in the
I don't know what the
census.
demographics are now, but it became predominantly African-American in 1960, according to the 1960 census. And probably is pretty balanced right now in terms of.
And maybe for the benefit of discussion, Nick, can you talk about maybe some of the people in the neighborhood who, was it a racially diverse group in the neighborhood that approved this
Yes,
language?
so in the spring of this year, I spoke at 2 neighborhood meetings that were announced through email, and one at the Trident Technical College campus and one at the St. John's Mission Church on Hanover Street. And we had very diverse audiences and a lot of good questions. And I made brief presentations at both of those and described the plan of putting up a marker and what it might say and what the process was, and described what the city's Commission on History does. And I got nothing but positive feedback. And I said, here's what I would propose to put on the text, something about just an overview of the neighborhood, and then specifically something about Hampstead Mall, the centerpiece of the village, and not try to get into the weeds of more specific stories. And I didn't get any negative feedback from the diverse audience. I got a lot of people thanking me for taking the initiative. So I feel like the neighborhood is going to receive this pretty well.
Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
And if you would turn your microphone on, Wilmot, just so it can be recorded.
I'm only trying to make sure that the element of diversity and ethnic and racial diversity is included in this, on this plaque. It is shown, the neighborhood is shown to have changed its character from a relatively affluent area to one which became a working class area. But in that working class area, there were many different kinds of people. Now you could, and that was unique about Charleston. Most cities in the South, Black people lived on one side of the town and whites lived on the other. But in the city of Charleston, Black people lived all over town till very recently, even south of Broad. I can remember my godmother owning a house south of Broad, so and visiting her when in my youth. But it is so that's the element I'm trying to get included in this text, so that you know that there's this tradition of people, of diverse groups of people living in close proximity to one another in the city of Charleston.
And so, but do you have a specific, I'm sorry, Robert, you had something to say too. And I'm just curious if you can like craft that desire into the appropriate language so that we can make the motion. But again, I think it's your emotion, David, and I guess, right. But Robert.
I'm just going to call. I was just going to call for a vote.
Okay, we have desire to.
Or I assume that the word diverse, which has seven characters, would fit in there. And into a diverse working class neighborhood.
I mean, you could change it into, but I'll go back into a diverse working class area. And next in 1850, I think you would have enough characters to split it across.
Can you
the
repeat
line.
that, please?
The originally affluent village later developed into a diverse working class area, comma, annexed in 1850.
Mr. Chairman,
You want to call the
but
vote?
it wasn't diverse. In other words, this is all presentism, which, you know, I knew was in vogue. But the whole point of it is that this neighborhood went from being primarily white Anglo-Saxon, then German, and then you know, it became known as Little Mexico. I think there were some Italians living there. So I mean, you know, the word diverse doesn't really say anything unless you want to say something specific about a specific point in time. I think what Nick has tried to do is give a very big overview of the area. And as to the east side, I don't know that it was diverse. I mean, at one point it was overwhelmingly majority Black, which is the opposite of diverse. So I don't think it'd be historically accurate. And so I just moved through the question. I think he's done an excellent job and we should approve it.
As I said, I can't agree that you should not have some description of the people who inhabited this area. This is not just a plat.
Well,
And
yeah, I
you
mean,
know, and the designated space. There are people living here, and it was diverse. I remember I used to make the trip from Bull Street on my bike every afternoon all the way over to
well, the school right there is named
over
after your
there,
father.
starting at Beckery's Bakery, which was a German bakery,
And- yeah.
and get
So
my cream puff.
Right, right.
And but there was a lot of it was a diverse neighborhood,
Right,
and
so,
it was a diverse, you could say area,
right.
and
right.
that would solve the question of space.
So, you have lobbied your fellow commission members, but I do think the way it proceeds now, we do have to call the vote, you know, to see if that motion to accept it as it is will carry, just following parliamentary rules of procedure. And we have the opportunity of people saying no and of people saying yes. And then, you know, Dale, did you have something to say?
I believe a member, I was only going to say that a member can request that the mover modify his motion by the terms specified. He has to say exactly what he wants it to be. But you may have found it.
But I do think it's your motion, and if
My
you,
motion, and I'm not going to accept any amendment. Okay.
okay, so then now we have to, you know, we have to vote on it. So for all of those who want to accept this side one of the Hampstead Village plaque as presented, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
I'm going to abstain because I had so much to do with this.
So I didn't count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess that is that 5. I assume that carries. Yeah. Okay, so we've done side 1. And so then now we're going to go to side 2. And any discussion? And do you want to say anything, Nick, about side 2, or basically you said it all in your opening comments? And this is specifically about the mall itself, the park that's there, not in the entire neighborhood. So if people want to read it again and decide whether there's any changes, or we can again entertain a motion
I'll move to approve. Second.
as presented. Okay, we have a first and a second. Do we have any discussion? And if people need time to read it? So any discussion? So we can call the question. Everyone in favor, as it is, say aye or raise their hand. Aye. And Nick's abstaining because he's the author, part of the author. So Wilmot? Nay. Okay, and then nay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't do nay before. Sorry. So I think before, Wilmot, I'm sorry, I didn't ask. So before, when we did it, your vote was nay and Nick abstained. Is that correct? For side 1. Right. And Mickey Rosenbroom was no as well too. Right. Just for the record. Right, yeah, okay, but just for the record. So we have. Pardon? Okay, and I'm sorry. Yeah, and would you introduce yourself? Okay,
I'm Councilwoman Caroline Parker. I was,
forgive my ignorance.
no,
sorry.
no, I excuse my lateness and as you can see. But yes, I apologize for interrupting the meeting like that. But yes, Councilwoman Caroline Parker for District 12, James Island. I was appointed and this is my first meeting.
Well, welcome to the.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't welcome you, but you know. So again, so we have the minutes reflect that as well. Okay,
Yes, sir. Sworn in January.
You familiar with commas and semicolons?
we argue a lot more about grammar often,
It's a big word. We do.
right? The joke is that history.
Grammatically, I'm wonderful. History, my husband thinks not so
Well,
much.
We like to say that history is open to interpretation, but grammar is not. There are some absolutes.
Not anymore these days, if you compare for individual piece.
Dale,
Mr. Chairman, I want to carry on some more discussion with Nick's approach, not the subject on the table. Should I give that now, or should we wait until our second agenda item?
well, since it follows Nick's approach, if that's okay with the other
Okay.
members, that we can talk about that now instead of having to separate two topics.
And I'll just present the notion and we can talk or not talk about it. We have agreed, there's a lot to be said about the mall and the village and the resulting part of Charleston. There's, we could talk about a lot of it, the churches, the German cemetery on Hanover Street, which has been moved because they were playing basketball on top of it. Quite a history there.
And there are two Jewish cemeteries in that neighborhood that were removed,
Also paid over because they didn't pay the
the
city.
taxes.
So
Right.
who owns? Anyway,
Benjamin Swan there.
okay, there's a lot we could talk about, but that brings me to the question of procedure and the purpose of the History Commission, or Commission on History. We all think we know what it is, but is it the place for us as a group to propose plaques and languages? And Nick has explained that he went right on up to Columbia to get it started. And I understand that's a fine way to do it. Anybody can do that. He's good at it. But can this committee as a commission initiate plaque proposals and language?
We have questioned that before for the enabling statute. And Mickey seems to have the longest history on this commission than anybody else. I thought the statute basically said I know historically in the past, the historical commission in the 40s and the 50s, I think did actually do this. And again, not an expert on the enabling legislation, but I have asked that in the past and it's my memory, so I'll qualify that our role is fairly limited and narrow, is that we approve or disapprove or vet information that is brought to us. Because generally there is a sponsoring organization, as it's noticed here. And as you can remember some of our past discussions, we decided it had to be a nonprofit. There was going to be one of these plaques, one of these state plaques in particular. At one point, a developer wanted to do it and people objected saying, well, that means anybody can just come forward and do it. Whether that's an answer, Dale, whether we qualify, for a marker like this, it would have to be sponsored by a nonprofit. So I think I can answer you specifically on this kind of marker that, we can't do it unless there is a nonprofit that's paying for it and sponsoring it. But as for the larger thing itself, if we wanted to put, something in Washington Park, I don't think the statute allows us to do that. But that's my thought, not Dale and then Robert.
This has been going on for about, I've been on this commission for about 25 years. I don't know how I'm still on it, but anyway, we debated this years ago. I've always thought, we're a commission that has certain specific authority to approve and disapprove things, really, but I think we can recommend things to city council. I've always thought that if the commission said, we think we need a statue of William Pitt somewhere, and we think the statue ought to look like this, and we think this, and we think that, if we were to send a recommendation to city council, I don't think anybody would think that we were acting improperly. So I think we have some authority to approve and disapprove things, but I really do think city council looks to this commission to for advice. So to the extent that something's missing in the city landscape, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think if we passed a resolution saying, city council, would you authorize us to do it? If there was a majority, I don't see anything wrong with that myself.
And I will say in the past, if you remember with the Calhoun statue being, the topic of being possibly loaned to Los Angeles, we were asked to make a recommendation to city council, either yay or nay, and then the city council was then going to follow up on it. And we were asked specifically, to your point, Robert, of making a recommendation, and which we did do. Right. So maybe we could request for clarity, because I can remember eons ago, not as long as y'all, when I did, I think, become a member of this commission. I think a part of my orientation packet was a copy of the statute. Right, maybe we can ask that we could have a copy of that statute, at least sent to us either before the next meeting or that kind of thing. Just so, again, we can be clear on that. And again, it's something that I knew at one point, but it has slipped my memory all those many years ago.
I have the statute, but I didn't get the orientation.
That was the orientation.
Thank you.
Right, yeah. I do think that would be, it's come up before in the past few meetings as well, too. And as people are getting more and more proactive and we get more attention, I think it's a good thing for us to know, whether we have the power to bring things forward or we just vet and approve and do yay or nay. But I know just in recent experiences, to repeat, we have been asked by the mayor, et cetera, to rule on something as a recommendation for city council to take up, which they in their can decide or not to take our recommendation. So next item on the agenda, is there anyone here to speak about the Susie Jackson Memorial Plaque? I know a little bit about it, but if there's someone else that knows more, oh, Jason's here. Great. I didn't see you, Jason. So if Jason Kronsberg can talk a little bit about, do you need that text as well too? I'm sure it's buried somewhere in all of that attachment. So Jason Kronsberg from the city is here to bring us up. You are recognized, Jason.
Okay, are we live or is this being recorded? Okay, good. Okay. So Jason Kronsberg, I am the director of the Parks Department for the city of Charleston. I'm a landscape architect by profession. So as you may know, we just finished the Susie Jackson Freedom Memorial Park. And as part of the process, I've been communicating with the family on the design and how we memorialize and monumentize, if you will, what the garden is other than just the sign. So working with the family and a little bit with Harlan already, hopefully we streamline the process here. The first round of text was a lot longer. And again, this came straight from the family with a little bit of wordsmithing after the fact, which they had approved. So we are bringing it back to you on behalf of the family so that we can have a bronze marker fabricated and installed in the center of the park. So that's kind of the big picture here. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So since all we talk about is word limit pretty much, is there a word limit? Does this fall in about the word limit, do you think?
I think there's not a limit. It just depends on how big it wants to be. So I think what we have is very clean and clear, and hopefully you'll see it the same. Again, happy to bring any recommendations back to the family that you all may see fit.
And nobody from the family here to represent it? Is
That's
there no-
correct.
Okay.
They're all way far out of town.
Okay. I will say just FYI, I already noticed that it's marked on Google Maps. I was looking at something in my neighborhood and I already saw that it was already marked as the Susie Jackson Memorial Park. So way to go.
Right.
You know,
And so so the goal is to, once we get through the process and we have the plaque fabricated, that is when we will have a formal dedication ceremony with the family coming in from out of town. And the first goal was to get the park opened up by the last anniversary of the Emmanuel tragedy, which we did. And it's a pretty cool place. So.
and I will say just, I think that there is, before we even open it for discussion, I'd just like to say that I think in the second paragraph, there is a word missing on the second sentence. The matriarch of her family, a member of Emmanuel for over 80 years, serving as a trustee, I guess, and that should be and missionary, it should be comma, she sang in the Jubilee choir and was a member of the Eastern Star. So I do see that there was no subject. So that's how something got dropped. And I think, anyway, but I just thought I would interject that before we discuss it, that is one obvious grammatical error.
There is the next to the last. I'm sorry.
And David's found it.
Yeah, in the third, also 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, the next to the last sentence, it says, we're brutally, 11 bullets pierced her body more than any other sustained by others. It probably just should say pierced her body more than 11 bullets, comma, more than sustained by others of the Emmanuel 9. Instead of saying any other and others.
Yeah.
Just delete the any other. And this.
Oh, gotcha. So you're saying any other deleted.
Yeah, delete any
Right.
other.
So-
So then it'll just read more than sustained by others. And then I have one other question. Are we taking questions or just grammatical?
I
I mean,
mean,
this relates to grammatical.
sure. No, I think, you know, so anyway, so why don't we open it for discussion to, I don't think so yes, let's
This is
discuss it. Go ahead.
wordsmithing, not content.
Right.
At the end, the next to the last sentence in the last paragraph, where it says to inspire you, I assume they're referring to the you as the person reading the plaque, to courageously encourage change. Okay, well, change for change's sake is not necessarily a good thing. So it seems to me you want to add an adjective like positive change, or something like that. Because otherwise, change in and of itself is just change. It could be negative, it could be positive, or whatever. So if you're trying to enhance that, it ought to be a positive slant. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Let's see. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kronberg, did you say that the family had reviewed this?
Yeah, so it originally came from them.
Oh, okay, great.
And then we worked on it and kind of wordsmithed, and
Okay,
then we sent it back to them. They had some more comments back.
and
Anyway,
this
so,
is the end
yeah, so
result.
other than the little wordsmiths typos, this is what they've got approved so far.
Great, thank you.
And again, if I may say, some of the wordsmithing was just putting it in format that I did that we normally do, is, trying to put the most important sentence at top, and maybe just cutting out some of the duplication. And it, what I had done was basically just, again, try to get it more into a format. But from what I see, it's the majority of what first came to me.
Yeah, and your effort was very helpful because it did do that. It was a lot longer, but there were a lot of duplicities in it.
Right. And we didn't have a birth date. We only had a death date. So it was, we did a little bit of editorial work, asking the family to give us her birth date, et cetera, like that. So, but again, if there's more discussion, and again, by way of procedure, again, I'll just throw this out there, if people want to do it, a paragraph at a time. So we don't jump all around. Robert?
Make a motion to amend it.
Okay, and so let's make sure we know what they are. So, and okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, so, and, right, discussion, but I can also just say what they are so we know what we're discussing, if that's okay.
I have another comment.
Okay.
That hadn't been brought up, and I don't know
Okay.
whether you want to include everything in one motion or go ahead with this and come back to more discussion.
Are you going to want to change the,
Well, my question is the use of the word sustained.
where is
Same-
that?
Same sentence David brought up first, paragraph 4, line 4. More than any other sustained by others of the manual 9. The word sustained has a lot of meanings. And in some sense, sustained means you may read that and say that they survived it.
Do you have a substitution?
I do. And I would say that, I'll just read this whole sentence with my change. 11 bullets pierced her body, comma, by more than any other of the Emmanuel 9. That there may be a better way to say it, but use of the word sustained. I tried to find an anonym for sustained and I couldn't, there's not one. Not a good, in the sense that it killed the lady. Somebody else may come up with that, but I would just take that out and say by more than any other of the Emmanuel 9.
So do you want to read the sentence as it would be?
11 bullets pierced her body, comma, by more than any other of the Emmanuel 9.
May I,
Suffered
Where would you put?
instead of sustained?
what if you began the sentence with she sustained?
Well, the word sustained is my problem.
I'm saying,
Sustained means in some way that supports and helps somebody get through a problem.
could you replace it with the word suffered? 11 bullets pierced her body, more than suffered by others of the Emmanuel
That
9.
would be fine.
So we'll have to ask, was it your, can we amend? You'll accept that amendment?
Mr. Kronsberg, will the family be okay with that?
We'll share it back with them. And I don't, I think everything is iterative and probably positive.
So
So
do we agree that the word sustained is it's not ambiguous. When you use it, it means something in the way you use it, but it can mean a lot of different things.
And again, you'll see on this commission, again, it's not just a historical fact, but people are going to judge the city of Charleston. Are we grammatically correct?
Right.
And so then there are so many different ways, to look at something. And again, I think we're all united that we want to be correct, but also do the family justice. David?
Well, I normally agree with Dale almost most anything. If you look at the sentence before, it already said everybody was murdered.
And that's ambiguous or conflicting to say that they sustained.
Well, I think that just means received into their bodies.
We understand
And
that.
because
but-
they're dead, then I think that would be implicit that they had been killed, not that they were wounded.
Right.
But anyway, it doesn't really.
Jason, do you know that there's an individual in particular who's used the word sustained? If it's our chairman, you don't have to embarrass him.
I don't remember.
I don't recall.
Okay.
With you, I think that you might, I really prefer the term that Harlan suggested, suffered, because I think we can all agree that the people who were attacked and murdered suffered, rather than sustained, which is vague and
Yes, sir.
unspecific. I would change it to read 11 bullets more than any suffered by others of the Emmanuel 9 pierced her body. Yet her love conquered pure evil and hate, etc.
And that seems to make more grammatical sense to me.
I think it makes it more grammatical and descriptive.
So again, just to repeat, as you said it, Wilmot, 11 bullets more than
any
other suffered,
any suffered by others.
more than suffered by
more than
others of the
any
Emmanuel 9.
suffered. No. more than any suffered by others of the Emmanuel Nine, pierced
No,
her body.
That wasn't my-
I think we had taken out any other. I'm just trying to read it out loud for sense, and if we all listen to it. 11 bullets, more
than
than
any.
suffered by others of the Emmanuel Nine, pierced her body.
No, you already said pierced.
No, we're moving it. So 11 bullets,
More than.
more than, is it more than
Any,
other suffered? No,
no, more than any suffered by others of the Emmanuel
We
Nine.
already got rid of that.
that's what I thought. So,
Double other.
so we.
First
took out
other
any
comes
other.
out.
First other.
More than any.
Suffered
by Others of the Emmanuel.
by others.
It doesn't really matter.
That's grammar. Alan?
So again, right, I just want to make sure, just for the record, that we are, that, so is it 11 bullets,
11 bullets, more
Comma.
than
more than
any suffered.
suffered by others of the Emmanuel Nine, pierced her body?
Yes,
I think
Okay.
it's more than suffered by any other. The word any relates. to
modifies.
people, not to the bullet.
So what's the
wo-
sentence that you're saying,
The
Dale?
word any relates back to the number.
More than suffered by any other, is the way I would read it.
No,
Can I interject a
Right, wait, hold on. Right, any others. Oh.
perhaps,
No, it relates to the others.
I think the
It relates
sentence
to the
needs,
others of the Emmanuel Nine.
I would propose that sentence needs another noun to clarify more. So 11 bullets pierced her body, comma, more wounds than her.
Other
Eleven
More than
bullets.
suffered by
11 bullets, more than
I
any
think that I
suffered.
suspect the family would probably like to avoid the word victim and use Charleston 9 as a collective noun.
So I think we're stuck on, and I think we had decided, Nick, that we wanted to change, so 11 bullets, comma, more than, I think we're stuck on more than,
Any.
suffered.
or you could say 11 bullets, more than any other of the Emmanuel Nine suffered, pierced her body. Is that correct?
More than suffered by.
So I'm going to read it to you. So 11 bullets, more than any other of the Emmanuel Nine suffered, pierced her body. Just trying to make the language more straightforward and not reversing.
Well, so I still think that 11 bullets pierced her body, comma, more wounds than those of the other Emmanuel 9.
More wounds than suffered by any other of the Emmanuel Nine.
I think that's more direct and clarifies what the word more is referring to.
I guess my question is, the feelings of the family are important, and I think we ought to make as few changes as possible. In other words, just editing, not. I don't know if the word wounds might be upsetting, that's all I'm saying.
You have a good point there.
If I may,
Jason,
in all of my correspondence with the family, one of their goals is to make sure that all of the details are there. So if the commission has recommendations, I'm sure they'll be open to receiving them. But they were just wanting to make sure that all of the details were in this plaque.
So
I think we have a pretty good sentence with 11 bullets, more wounds than any suffered by others of the Emmanuel Nine, pierced her body. Full stop.
I would accept that.
So that would be 11 bullets, more wounds than any other suffered.
than any suffered by others of the Emmanuel 9.
Okay.
Pierce the body is the
No,
end.
so 11 bullets, more wounds than suffered by any other of the Emmanuel 9. That would be set off in commas, pierced her body.
Right.
Repeat again, 11 bullets, comma, more wounds than suffered by any other of the Emmanuel 9, comma, pierced her body.
Couldn't we put pierced her body earlier before the comma clause?
So to keep that, and again, it's all, we're all doing this to amend. So that the alternate version would be 11 bullets, more bullets, pierced her body,
comma,
more wounds,
than any
More.
other wounds.
more wounds than suffered by any other of the Emmanuel 9.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
shorter and it's easier to understand. There
Okay.
are too many clauses in there.
Okay. Okay, 11 bullets,
Pierced.
pierced her body, more wounds. More wounds than suffered by any other of the Emmanuel 9. No, we don't know.
Wounds Than any suffered
Right.
by others of the Emmanuel 9.
Well, you know, we were
Wounds than
we were-
any suffered. Yeah. Wounds than any. Suffered. Yeah, sure. The number, I think, what, I'm not mistaken, what we're driving at is that that Susie Jackson suffered more wounds than anyone else who was shot.
right, and we're trying to.
And that, I think is conveyed by more wounds than any suffered by others of the Emmanuel 9, who might have taken less than 11 bullets.
My point was that it's simpler to say 11 bullets pierced her body, comma, more than, and then what you said, so that it's
More
shorter.
than any
and
other
it's
suffered.
easier to understand.
Others of the Emmanuel 9.
No,
But
yeah,
I'm saying,
11 bullets pierced her body.
Mhm.
Instead of putting half of it in one side of a clause and the other half on the other side. It's cleaner English.
the fact is, there's a comparison going on. And the comparison is between the wounds, the number of wounds she suffered,
Yeah,
and the number of wounds suffered by
Exactly.
the others.
exactly.
I think we're agreeing.
We agree on that. I'm
Um,
just making it easier to understand for the common man or woman like me.
Right.
What? What?
Turn. You want to, so basically all Peg is saying, we're all agreeing on the phrase, you know, more wounds than any other, et cetera. Peg is just saying, keep the language as the family wrote it. 11 bullets. We're just saying pierce her body, moving it closer back to the 11 bullets rather than
Putting it at
at the
end.
end, the end of the clause that was separated by commas. So we're using the same amount of words. We're just transposing the words closer to how the family originally wanted it. Sum that up correctly.
I don't know what the family, oh, pardon me.
This is close to what, I mean, I will say you know.
Linguistically, let's just put linguistically. Yeah. 11 bullets pierced her body. That gets your attention real quick.
Right, and it's pretty graphic. So 11,
Yes, it does, but it doesn't
Then you put the.
it doesn't
comma.
relate as well to the last sentence in the paragraph. Because the effort at the beginning of this phrasing is to show that all these people were suffering bullet wounds. Hers were greater than theirs.
right,
And as a result of that, the counterpoint of her example
right.
shows up more clearly
Right,
with the following sentence.
right.
That's the reason
No, but again, and I'm just repeating.
that's the reason I was suggesting.
Right, but again, we are saying all the exact same words. We're just putting pierced her body after the first two words in the sentence instead of saying it at the end of the sentence. And so again, it's the same amount of words. It's just moving them closer to how they originally are. So again, I think your point is taken, like I said, so, yet her love conquered pure evil and hate through her peaceful ways and the grace she left in her wake. So I think, Robert, with your permission, right, to amending. So I'm just going to recap all of the amendments to your motion, and then we can vote on it if there's no more discussion. In the third paragraph, and I want to say this out loud because the second line, second sentence, the matriarch of her family, a member of Emmanuel for over 80 years, serving as a trustee and missionary, so that we'd be including the word missionary, comma, she sang in the Jubilee choir, and continue the sentence as it is. And then the next one would be, and let's hope I get it right, 11 bullets pierced her body, more wounds than suffered by any other of the Emmanuel 9. And then in the next to final sentence in the last paragraph, following David McCormick's thing, change is, I'll just continue, grandmother, and to inspire you to courageously encourage positive change instead of just change for change's sake. As I understand it, those are how it's amended. That's your motion. And anyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? Anyone
Abstain.
abstaining? Say Wilmot's abstaining.
Yep.
So I think we've done it. I think we carried that. So will you convey that to the family,
Yeah.
Jason?
So will you share back the final version?
Oh,
Right.
last paragraph. Susie, too familiar, Susie Jackson's life.
I think, and it's, the Susie Jackson Freedom Memorial Garden, that's how the family themselves, and we've already voted on it.
I'm saying Susie Jackson's life because it bears reiteration that we're not speaking about someone who, this is a very serious
Right, so do you want to make a
matter.
motion?
Yeah, Susie Jackson's life.
So do you want to make a motion
Yeah, I'd like to.
that we
move
amend?
Second.
It should be, it's more formal.
Okay, okay, we got a second. Any discussion? Dale?
I disagree with a couple of reasons. First of all, the family has obviously approved.
But we're still making changes, so
Okay,
this is just another.
I'm just telling you why. That's number one. Number two, this is the paragraph that becomes very personal, not about how many bullets she sustained or suffered, but this talks about her as a real person and what her long-lasting effect is. So the family, I believe, wants her to be known as Susie in that paragraph.
Any other discussion?
What I'm getting at is that this is the final mention of her full name in this text. And because you want to be as precise and clear and definite as possible about who this is and who you're talking about, the full name bears repetition.
And then I think we can, if there's any other discussion? No, so we've got another amendment to amend what we just did, to add another addition. So if there's no more discussion, shall we call? Just basically in this final thing, instead of saying Susie's life, to say Susie Jackson's life. Right there.
We don't know what the family's intent was here. The family, of course, who drafted this had an opportunity to put in her full name at the end there. And perhaps it was their intention to keep it more personal and just mention her as Susie. And we can't intuit what their intention was. So I'm more inclined to leave it as it is in that last sentence.
Yes, ma'am.
I seconded your motion because, as you said, this is going to go back and it is a recommendation from the commission. So to add that last name, you know, that may be something they want to consider.
Yeah, I would add it as,
Okay.
I think it bears repetition.
So we can,
And that is also consonant with African American language.
right.
You leave it Susie's there and instead of hers, you put Susie Jackson's legacy. Susie Jackson's
He's saying on the final line, saying Susie
legacy
Jackson's.
is one of peace and power for all eternity.
On Susie Jackson's life.
But again,
Yeah,
so,
well, if
so
you wanted
it's,
to keep the Susie's life, you
It's-
could just change the bottom one where it's just saying hers, you say Susie Jackson's legacy.
so it's Wilmot's motion and he can decide whether he wants, you know,
Okay,
you know.
that's
um,
just a suggestion.
You're right, if he wants to change that too. So why don't we just, if there's no more discussion, can we just call the vote? So everyone in favor of changing Susie's life to Susie Jackson's life. If they say aye, everyone say aye or raise their hand.
Aye.
Anyone say nay? Anyone abstain?
I'm abstaining on the grant.
Anyway, so we've got 2 ayes. We just need to do this for the vote. So are there any nays?
This is, an I would be to change.
An aye would be to change it to Susie Jackson. So we've got 1, 2, 3 ayes,
I'll do another.
4 ayes. Okay. Nays?
I'd say no, because this is what the family sends.
Okay. 1 nay,
2 nays.
2 nays, and
I'm abstaining on the grounds that we'd already accepted it. Everybody had been asked for any amendments they wanted, and then after the fact, they raised it.
so 3 abstentions. So y'all tally that. So were there 4 ayes?
4 ayes,
Right, 4 ayes,
2 nays, 3 abstentions.
3 abstentions. Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I know it's highly irregular, but I know this goes against your grain, but it seems to me we ought to also say that if the family objects and would like to say Susie, the commission agrees without another vote that we would accept the family's request.
Is that okay with you, Wilmot?
Fine.
Yeah, okay. So if you can convey that, so we will put that language in the language that you can
Yeah,
convey to
I
the
don't think they
family.
would.
We will give them the choice
object
to say,
I know members of the family.
we will give them the
And
choice to
they're
say
in
Susie or
Susie,
Susie
yeah.
Jackson, and whatever they decide, you know, we will.
The reason
concur. Thank you.
I'm suggesting it is because this is a formal statement. And although you would like to talk, even though the family may feel
Right.
familiar enough to simply say Susie, or I might say Miss Susie. The fact is that you're talking about a being now who has assumed spiritual importance and significance. And it's respectful and important to state formally and clearly who you're talking about.
And I'm hoping if you convey to the family, you know, that we respect them, their choice does it, and we put this in there for them to choose, you know, the more formal or the more personal, and we will defer to them to do that.
Absolutely.
I would, you know, your preference.
Okay, so thank you, Jason. And like I said, I'll get that, you know, to you. And if it don't, email me and I'll.
Thank you all for your help on this.
Okay.
It's, I know it seems a little tedious at times, but I'm just glad that we have this commission here to do this work because it really means something for what we display in the public. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. So with no other business, yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't notice any miscellaneous business, but I would, again, thank you for welcoming me to this commission. I apologize for my lateness. Wonderful. Hopefully I'll get some introductions after we adjourn, but And again, I apologize for the interruptions, but I would like to ask something for a future agenda. I don't know if this is the time to do it or if you would prefer an email. We have a community in my district that just received a historical designation, and they're working on the individual, sort of the head of that community is working on getting a plaque for that community. And it's sort of a community that some lies in the county, some in the city, but they have a sign in the city currently. And they have just asked me for assistance in helping with that process. So hopefully I'm hoping that I can bring that to y'all and we can help this community get their plaque up.
We have done that in the past, specifically with Maryville, Ashleyville. They actually came with, lots of information. And I guess I'm willing to say, we can do it in a public format, but, if you would like to, email me privately too, to get some work done, before, just to basically to help to tailor it. So then, there's a lot of people spending their time here. And then if we can, get it in a more, as we did with this, get it into a more usable format, then it takes less of everybody's time. But sure, I think.
Perfect. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm sorry. The B Field community. It's on James Island. So headed down towards the beach. There's a fire station in that area, if you're familiar. Okay.
It is in the city limits. It's our purview. And again, if it's out of the city limits, it is not.
It's a unique
Yeah.
community because some of it is in the county and some of it is in the city.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, we're glad that you're here. I'm speaking for everyone on the commission. Glad to see you here. But said anyone, can I entertain a motion to adjourn? Okay, so I'm sorry. No, we're still under new business. Yeah.
Still on new business, great. Mike, I had a communication from some friends of mine who are tennis enthusiasts and who noted that there was a court. I don't know whether the city of Charleston has anything to do with the Daniel Island tennis tournament or the tennis courts there, the park in which the tennis is played. But there was a court designated, the Althea Gibson Court. And they had just come from New York and they were looking for the Althea Gibson Court and visited the Daniel Island Park and found other people who were looking for it as well. Apparently there's a plaque at the court, but it is small enough that it doesn't compare well with the stature of Althea Gibson, who was a real tennis phenom. And especially for her time in New York, she is pictured in a statue alongside Louis Armstrong and Arthur Ashe, and a large statue. And since she is a South Carolinian, I'm wondering whether we are not following a pattern that I have noted in prior conversations, where we're soft pedaling the accomplishments of African Americans who have made not only significant but major contributions in whatever field they may of endeavor they may have entered. So I'm hoping that the commission will look into appropriate designation of the Althea Gibson Court. I don't know how we would do that, whether we would make a recommendation to City Council or
Are we sure that it's on public land?
or make a
Wilmot?
statement or make a statement, but it's something I think we should consider.
Are we sure it's on public land and it's not Ben Navarro's? Jason
I
has
really
something to
don't
say.
know who it
Is-
belongs to.
Yeah, so if
We've
it's
had
on
so many
public, I think if it's on public land,
Mhm.
we have a way in, but if it's on private property, Jason seems to know, so.
Right, we do have a court park naming policy.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is at the Credit One Tennis Center that the city owns. I don't know if it went through that process or not, but we do have a process by which a proposal is prepared and submitted to the Citizen Recreation Commission, which then reports out to the Recreation Committee of City Council and then to full council for court or park naming. So again, if it's at the Credit One Tennis Center, that's the process by which it should have been brought to fruition. I don't know if that happened or not, though.
I see. So you're saying that there is a process because the city does own the property.
That's right.
There is a process that you could follow. The
Yes.
city government
Yes.
having to do with appropriate designation and name.
Yeah. So yeah, if you wanted to name a court after somebody, a
Well,
park, or rename a park, there is a process.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the court has already named.
Okay. Got it.
But it was designated with a plaque that seems to ignore her importance in tennis.
Right.
So
And again, I just know Dennis, Daniel Island has got both private and public courts, and I don't play tennis. I don't get a Daniel Island. So I just don't know if it's a public court or a private court. And I think, if you could find the plaque, I think that would help it. But then obviously Jason is the contact person, to do it through the parks process. And apparently we have nothing to do with tennis.
I'm saying it's a historical designation. It's named for her,
Right,
but it is historical in character
right,
because she's an historical figure.
right,
Yeah, and so that's the reason I'm
right,
saying that an appropriate designation should be made.
right, right, right.
Something consonant with her stature.
Right, right. So any other business?
Yes, sir.
Dale?
I'm always interested in how a group that works together can improve its efforts. And as we've all learned, whether we've been here 25 or more years or a few months, I didn't know what to say,
35.
35 or less, that
Shaving yours.
much of what we do now is editorial work. Okay. That's some of the most difficult work to be done by a committee is editorial work, especially when we don't exchange documents editorially marked by email. There is an alternative to that, and we could use it in this room. And I guess what I'm proposing is if this commission agreed, that we would approach the clerk of council to see if there's an electronic means that we can display the editorial work as it's being developed. You do it on a piece of paper, and I wish you luck with that when you go to send it to Jason. But it can be done. It can be done with a display screen and one person, either a chairman, or I don't think we have a secretary on the commission, or a staff member could do this. A lot of people have practiced at it, where you display the work on the screen. You'll have paragraph 4 already entered, and then as a motion is made, the motion of change is shown in that text. And when it's concluded, it's finalized by the chairman. Hit the button, it's done. And I'm not sure of the process whereby this commission would ask the clerk of council if that technology is available. And if a motion in that sense is appropriate, I'd make it.
Anybody want to second that?
I'm second it just because I'd like to see somebody up there struggling trying to do it.
I'll wait for
I like to see, I always enjoy it. Deposition, the people spend 30 minutes trying to get things up on the screen. They can put up on a chart in more than 2 seconds. But I agree.
It wouldn't be like that.
So the city will address that.
Little check might be better for us. I think. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Cook. I'm the clerk. And yes, I think we can find a way to do that. We can probably pull up a meeting on Zoom and screen share it on the screen. And I think that's something that should be easy for us to do. That way everyone can see it at the same time. So we'll be happy to do that.
That'd be great.
You have a 14-year-old that can operate?
We'll find one.
So are you saying that your staff the function, make that function?
Yes, sir, we can do that.